So imagine you're staring down a massive, just totally life-altering choice. You might be agonizing over whether to, uproot your whole family for a new career opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Or maybe weighing the risks of sinking your entire life savings into a startup.
Right. Or even something that seems really simple but is actually incredibly stressful, like picking the perfect destination for a family vacation.
That's always a nightmare.
It really is. And usually you wrestle with that completely alone. You're sketching out this frantic pros and cons list, tossing and turning at 2 in the morning.
Just relying entirely on your own exhausted brain to figure it out.
Exactly. But today we are exploring a radically different approach. We've got our hands on a fascinating practical guide, and it merges advanced AI prompt engineering with the deep psychology of human decision making.
Which is such a unique combination.
It really is. So the mission for today's deep dive is to show you how to take an artificial intelligence and transform it from this generic, impersonal black box into a highly customized mirror of your own mind.
Yeah, we're talking about an AI that actually reasons using your intuitive shortcuts, your specific core values, and even your unique blind spots.
Which is wild.
It is, because moving past the myth of the generic chatbot is really the foundational step here. For a long time, we've just treated large language models as basic data retrieval systems.
Right, like an encyclopedia.
Exactly. You ask a question, it hands you a very sanitized Wikipedia-style answer. But the source material we're unpacking today flips that entirely. The goal is no longer just extracting options from a machine. It's about applying established psychology to essentially replicate your personal thought process within the AI's architecture.
And that is exactly what we are going to build for you today. We're going to walk you through the psychological foundations you need to understand, give you the actual practical frameworks, and outline the safety guardrails so you can start building your own personal AI decision assistant.
Yeah, the idea is to empower you to make much sharper choices without drowning in that dreaded information overload.
Right. But, I mean, to teach an AI how we think, I imagine we first need to understand the underlying science of how the human brain actually processes a decision. So where do we even start with that?
Well, you really have to start with Daniel Kahneman.
Okay.
He was a Nobel laureate, an incredibly influential psychologist. And in his work, particularly the book Thinking Fast and Slow, he popularized this dual model of how human minds operate.
Right, the two systems.
Exactly. He categorized our cognitive processes into two distinct systems, System 1 and System 2.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is the practical difference between the two?
So System 1 is your fast, intuitive, emotional, and completely automatic brain. Think of it as your evolutionary survival mechanism.
Oh, interesting.
The guide we're looking at uses a really brilliant everyday example. Imagine you pick up a cup of coffee, you take a sip, and it tastes distinctly metallic and sour. Your brain instantly screams, "Do not drink that."
Right, you spit it out immediately.
Exactly. You didn't pause to perform a, chemical analysis of the liquid. You didn't sit there weighing the probability of food poisoning. You just instantly reacted.
Because if our ancestors stopped to do a chemical analysis of a wrestling bush, they would have been eaten by a tiger. It's a necessary shortcut.
Spot on. But because System 1 relies entirely on those rapid shortcuts, it is highly vulnerable to cognitive biases.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it jumps to conclusions based on recent memories or just raw emotional states. System 2, on the other hand, is your slow, deliberate, logical, and highly effortful mode of thinking.
So this is the spreadsheet brain.
Totally. System 2 is what activates when you sit down at your kitchen table with a spreadsheet to analyze your monthly budget, or when you're trying to calculate the long-term tax implications of a business decision. It takes immense cognitive energy to run System 2.
Yeah, I have to challenge the premise here because if my understanding is correct, artificial intelligence models, by their very nature, they default to a System 2 way of operating, right?
You do, yeah.
I mean, they don't have biology. They don't get tired. They don't have gut feelings. They don't smell sour coffee. They're just probabilistic engines built on pure logic.
Right.
So if humans are naturally flawed and biased when we use our fast System 1, why on earth would we want to teach a hyperlogical, super smart AI to mimic our irrational human shortcuts? Wouldn't we want the AI to just be pure, unadulterated logic to save us from our messy emotions?
See, that is the pivotal question of this entire framework. Pure, unadulterated logic is spectacular if you are, say, trying to calculate the trajectory of a rocket.
Sure.
But human decisions are rarely pure math problems. Decisions are about your specific, highly subjective life. Let's look at that career opportunity again. Pure objective logic might tell you that moving across the country for a 30% pay raise is the mathematically optimal choice.
Seems like a no-brainer on paper.
On paper, yeah. But pure logic doesn't know that you deeply value being a 10-minute drive from your aging parents,
Yeah.
or that your kid has finally, settled into a great school.
Ah, okay. So pure logic without the human context is basically useless advice.
It's actually worse than useless. It's alienating. Because if the AI doesn't understand your emotional shortcuts, your fears, and your personal values, its logical recommendation will just feel completely disconnected from reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. What's fascinating about recent research in prompt engineering is that while large language models do default to that sterile system 2 logic, you can actually force them to simulate the messy human mixture of both systems.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because to get an AI to simulate your specific emotional style, you have to actually figure out what your style is.
Yes,
So
exactly.
step one of this whole process isn't opening up a laptop or writing code. It's deep, uncomfortable self-reflection.
It really is an act of profound self-knowledge. I mean,
Mm.
you cannot articulate instructions to an AI without first holding a mirror up to your own psychological tendencies.
Right.
You have to ask yourself some hard questions before you ever touch a keyboard. Like, are you naturally more intuitive or do you lean analytical?
Mm-hmm.
When you face a crisis, what are the first 3 questions you constantly find yourself asking?
Yeah.
What are the core values you prioritize above absolutely everything else?
I love the exercise the source text suggests for figuring this out, and I think we should actually do it right now. So I want you, the listener, to think about your last major life decision.
Oh, this is a great exercise.
Yeah, put yourself right back in that moment of choosing. What was the very first thing you felt? Just the raw, unpolished emotion. Did your stomach drop? Did you feel a surge of ego?
Hmm.
And then after that initial feeling passed, what did you actually sit down and analyze on paper?
If you can honestly map out the delta between that first feeling and that second analysis, you possess the blueprint of your personal decision-making style.
Wow.
Yeah, you've identified your internal values and your default biases. And once you have that human psychology mapped out, the next step is translating it into a syntactical language the AI can actually process.
Which brings us to crafting the personal decision maker based prompt. This is where you're essentially building a highly organized digital equivalent of yourself that just sort of sits on your shoulder.
Exactly like a digital mini.
Yeah. One that understands your emotional landscape, but forces you to look at the data before you do something impulsive. So according to the guide, you start by establishing a role. You literally type to the AI, "You are my personal decision maker assistant." And then you feed it that psychological profile you just built.
Right, and the underlying mechanism here is crucial. When you feed an LLM your profile, you're heavily weighting its neural network towards specific conceptual clusters.
Okay.
But the real magic happens with what the text calls the two-phase instruction. You don't just dump your profile and say, help me decide. You explicitly instruct the AI to reason sequentially in 2 distinct phases.
Wait, so phase one is what?
Phase 1,
Yeah.
react as my system 1.
So you're telling the computer to simulate an impulsive human reaction.
Yes, you're telling it to generate text that reflects your fast intuition and your specific emotional shortcuts, all based on the profile you provided.
Okay, and phase two.
Then you mandate phase 2.
Yeah.
Analyze as my system 2. Now you tell it to break down the cold logic, the financial details, the long-term implications.
Why does separating it out like that matter mechanically, though? Like, why not just ask it to consider both at the same time?
Because of how large language models predict tokens. If you ask for both simultaneously, the model tends to average them out into this very bland, middle-of-the-road response.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. By forcing it to output the System 1 reaction first, the AI lays down a foundation of text that acknowledges the emotional reality. Then when it moves to System 2, its subsequent logical analysis is contextually grounded in that preceding emotional text.
So it's evaluating the logic against the emotion.
Exactly, rather than just ignoring the emotion entirely.
That makes total sense. And the output requirement for this prompt is very strict. You don't just want a rambling philosophical essay from the AI.
Definitely not.
You have to command the AI to deliver 3 very specific things at the end of its response. First, a clear, definitive recommendation. It cannot sit on the fence.
Right.
Second, the potential risks or blind spots of that specific recommendation. And third, One single follow-up question for you to help refine the thought process.
And that third element transforms the entire dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
By ending with a targeted question, it stops being a static search engine query and becomes a dynamic dialogue.
It pulls you back in.
Yeah, it forces you, the human, to keep engaging your own system too alongside the machine.
Now that base prompt sounds incredibly powerful for everyday choices, but the source material also dives into what happens when you face a deeply complex, multifaceted decision. The kind of problem where a simple two-step emotional logical process isn't going to cut it.
Right, the really big stuff.
Yeah, so how do we level up the AI for those massive life crossroads?
Well, when the stakes are that high, you need to introduce advanced reasoning frameworks. And the first one you should implement is called chain of thought.
Okay, how does it work?
The execution is deceptively simple. You just add a phrase like, think step by step, explaining your reasoning as I would, to your prompt.
It sounds like a math teacher telling a student to show their work.
That is exactly what it is doing. And the mechanical impact on the AI is actually profound.
Really? Just from that one sentence?
Yes, because when an AI attempts to jump straight from a complex problem to a final answer, it often hallucinates or skips logical steps. But by forcing it to generate the intermediary tokens that showing its work phase, you provide the model with more computational runway.
So it literally computes the logic more accurately because it's processing the microsteps out loud.
Exactly.
So if chain of thought is forcing the AI to walk carefully down a single path, the next technique feels like playing a game of multidimensional chess. It's called tree of thoughts. I really love this concept. How does it actually work in practice?
So imagine a chess player staring at a board. They don't just calculate one single sequence of moves, right? They think, well, if I move my knight here, my opponent does X and I do Y. But if I move my bishop instead, the board looks entirely different. Tree of thoughts instruct the AI to do exactly that with your life decision. You force the AI to explore multiple diverging branches of a decision simultaneously.
Wow. Okay.
So instead of just analyzing a binary, should I take this new job, yes or no, it analyzes branch A, taking the new job and relocating. Branch B, staying at the current job and negotiating a raise. And branch C, pivoting to a completely different industry.
And it maps out the downstream consequences of each of those branches side by side, based on my personal value.
Yes, it essentially runs a simulation of your life 6 months down the line for each independent branch and evaluates which future state aligns best with your core psychological profile.
That is wild.
It's powerful. But you do have to be careful here, because an AI can easily generate 3 very plausible sounding but deeply flawed branches.
So how do we trust the evaluation then?
That's where a validation technique called self-consistency is applied. You instruct the AI to review its own branches from multiple different angles independently, and then select the most coherent, consensus-driven path.
Like a committee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're essentially setting up a panel of experts inside the AI to debate the options and vote on the most robust outcome.
So what does this all mean for our flaws? Because this is the part that genuinely worries me. If I spend all this time teaching an AI my personal values, my emotional reactions, and my exact thinking style, how do we prevent the AI from just amplifying my absolute worst habits?
That is a very real concern.
Right. Let's say I'm an overly optimistic person to a massive fault. I always think a home renovation will take half the time and cost half the money. Won't my shiny new AI just become an echo chamber? Won't it look at my terrible, overly optimistic plan and say, looks great, let's buy a sledgehammer?
Yeah, that is the trap of personalization if you're not careful. But the framework provides a brilliant countermeasure called controlled biases. You don't try to hide your flaws from the AI to look good. You explicitly weaponize the AI against those flaws.
How does that look when I'm actually typing out the prompt?
You literally write your flaw into the instructions as a constraint. So you tell the AI, consider my known tendency to be wildly over-optimistic about timelines and budgets. I want you to actively counter this bias by assuming a worst-case scenario for every timeline I suggest and demand hard historical evidence before agreeing with my budget.
Oh, wow. So it's playing devil's advocate.
Exactly. You're programming it to be the exact devil's advocate you desperately need.
So you're acknowledging your blind spot, but because human nature makes it incredibly hard to correct that blind spot in the heat of the moment, you just offload the discipline to the machine.
Right.
The AI doesn't get swept up in the excitement of a new project.
Exactly. The AI becomes an unemotional structural safety net against your own highly documented psychological pitfalls.
Okay, let's take all of this, our System 1 and System 2 phases, our multidimensional tree of thoughts, and our controlled biases, and look at what this actually looks like in practice. The source gives some great tangible examples of where to apply this, and vacation planning was surprisingly highlighted as a perfect test case.
I know it sounds trivial compared to a career change, but a family vacation is a classic high-stress clash of cognitive systems.
It really is. I mean, your System 1 intuition is screaming, I'm exhausted, I want to drink something out of a coconut on a white sand beach right this second.
Yes.
But your System 2 needs to step in and realize, well, you have a strict budget, it's hurricane season in the Caribbean, and a 12-hour travel day is going to result in a spectacular meltdown for your toddler.
Exactly. And by feeding this conflict into your AI decision assistant, the AI validates that visceral emotional desire for rest. But it does the heavy computational lifting of finding a destination that actually satisfies the logical constraints of the toddler and the bank account. And you can then scale their exact same architecture up to a massive career pivot. You can use the AI to simulate the tension between your specific professional fears and your long-term ambitions.
Like leaving a corporate job to open a bakery.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make that leap, you can ask the AI to evaluate that pivot explicitly through the lens of your need for creative fulfillment versus your documented terror of financial instability.
And it extends beyond just practical logistics into deeply ethical decisions, too. The text suggests you can even incorporate specific ethical lenses into your prompt.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're facing a dilemma at work, you can ask the AI to evaluate the choices based on utilitarianism, which is doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people, or deontological ethics, which focuses on adhering to strict rules of right and wrong regardless of the outcome. Or you can use a much simpler lens and just prompt it to answer, what would my future self say about this decision 10 years from now?
Those lenses are incredibly powerful, but we have to address the reality of applying this framework.
Yeah, the risks.
Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, this level of customized power is remarkable. But if you deploy it without understanding the inherent dangers, it can become a serious liability. The guide is very explicit about the necessary safety guardrails, and the first one revolves around the very biases we've been discussing.
Right, because even if you install controlled biases to check your own human flaws, the AI model itself carries hidden biases from its massive training data.
Exactly. Large language models are trained on human data, which means they contain human prejudices. If your personal blind spots happen to quietly align with the AI's hidden training biases, you could find yourself in an invisible echo chamber, just making decisions based on a massively distorted view of reality. The absolute rule here is that you must always verify the AI's factual outputs and fundamental logic against external objective sources.
Which leads directly into the danger of overconfidence. When an AI perfectly mimics your reasoning style and speaks your emotional language, its answers are going to feel incredibly comforting.
They will.
They'll feel intuitively right to you because they were literally designed to. But the source material is adamant you must never delegate critical, high-stakes decisions like a major health diagnosis, a legal dispute, or a massive financial investment without strict human supervision.
The AI is a tool to organize your reasoning. It is not a substitute for your ultimate responsibility. And there's also a significant privacy consideration here, too.
Oh, absolutely.
To make this personal assistant effective, you have to feed it a highly detailed psychological profile. You're telling it your values, your fears, your personal flaws.
And the rule of thumb there is data minimization. You only share the absolute necessary behavioral patterns. You don't need to give the AI your bank account routing numbers, the names of your children, or your deepest, darkest secrets for it to understand that you value financial stability and family time.
Exactly. And finally, there's the reality of human evolution. You're not a static piece of code. The person you are today listening to this is not the person you will be in 5 years.
Right. People change.
Your core values shift. Your tolerance for financial risk changes. Your life circumstances evolve. If you set up this intricate prompt today and never update it, 3 years from now, your AI will be diligently making recommendations for a version of you that no longer exists.
So it requires active maintenance. You have to continually engage in that deep self-reflection to keep the AI's underlying profile accurate.
Yes, the AI is an infinitely patient, highly structured mirror. But it cannot replace the human judgment required to know when the mirror is out of date.
Mm-hmm.
The true mastery of what Kahneman's research points toward, and what this guide attempts to operationalize, is learning the delicate balance of knowing when to trust your immediate gut intuition and when to pause, step back, and activate deep structural analysis.
So bringing all these threads together, by taking the time to deeply understand our own fast and slow thinking, we can map out our personal values and our inherent cognitive biases. We can take that psychological map and translate it into a foundational base prompt that forces a machine to weigh our emotional reality against cold logic. And by layering in advanced techniques like chain of thought, tree of thoughts, and controlled biases to check our worst impulses, we can literally transform a generic chatbot into an empowering, highly personalized extension of our own minds.
It becomes an exercise where the technology is almost secondary. You're using the processing power of the machine to achieve a much more profound level of self-discovery.
It's an incredible framework.
It really is. But there is one final implication of all this that we haven't touched on yet, something for you to really think about.
Oh, what's up?
If you spend all this time meticulously analyzing your own psychology, teaching an AI how to mimic your decision-making process, and then you routinely rely on its highly structured, beautifully bias-corrected feedback to guide your daily choices, over time, is the AI actually learning to think like you? Or, by constantly absorbing its perfectly structured, rational outputs, are you slowly retraining your own brain to think more like the AI?
Yeah.
At a certain point, when you're standing at a major crossroads in your life, who is programming whom?
Wow. That is going to keep me up tonight. We will definitely leave you to ponder that one the next time you open up your digital assistant. Our challenge to you this week is to sit down, map out your fast and slow thinking, and try building your very first personal decision maker assistant. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.